Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're opening up the intelligence vault to examine the foundational infrastructure that's quietly shaping the next chapter of the global digital economy. You know, every market cycle tells a story, but if you look closely, the real story isn't about volatile prices or fleeting market caps. It's really about the construction of entirely new paradigms. To understand exactly where we're going, we first need to observe where we've been. Historically, capital always flows toward powerful, transformative ideas. We saw this with the early foundation of the internet in the 90s, the shift to model technology, the massive migration to cloud computing, and now the rise of artificial intelligence. Each of these eras required massive, fundamental architecture before they could ever reach global scale. And beneath the daily noise of market cycles and breathless headlines, the true signal is always found in that long-term infrastructure. We aren't here to predict prices, offer financial advice, or guess which individual tokens might win tomorrow. Instead, we're here to separate the speculative noise from the structural signal and to identify the underlying trends that are going to be with us for decades. So here is our blueprint for today. We'll start with the architecture of tomorrow, then move into decentralizing machine intelligence, digitizing global asset ownership, next-generation market architecture, decentralized physical infrastructure, and finally, investing in civilization's future. Let's begin with part one, the architecture of tomorrow, and how we're building the foundation. Throughout history, the greatest economic shifts, whether it was laying down railways or expanding the electrical grid, started with foundational infrastructure. True vision requires recognizing this vital architecture before it becomes obvious to the rest of the world. The four narratives we're going to explore today represent exactly that, the quiet construction of tomorrow's systems. Moving to part two, decentralizing machine intelligence, which is essentially the infrastructure of intelligence. Artificial intelligence is obviously no longer a futuristic concept. It's an economic reality that's actively transforming industries across the globe. But while we marvel at its capabilities, we have to pause and ask a rather fundamental question about centralized control. Who actually owns the infrastructure of this intelligence? Because historically, the most capable AI systems have been locked strictly behind the closed doors of a few centralized organizations. But a new movement is asking a slightly different question. What if intelligence itself could become decentralized? Illustrative projects like BitTensor represent an exploration into an open marketplace where global contributors are actually incentivized to build and train AI networks collaboratively. Now, we're not focused on whether this specific project is going to dominate the market. Rather, we're looking at what it beautifully illustrates, which is a structural shift where the infrastructure supporting machine intelligence could become decentralized, open, and globally distributed. Next up is part three. Digitizing global asset ownership, often referred to as real-world assets. For decades, the ownership of stocks, bonds, real estate, and private equity has been recorded on highly fragmented, traditional ledgers. But bringing these legacy assets onto the blockchain forces us to ask a pretty profound question. What actually happens when the very concept of ownership becomes natively digital? Well, tokenizing real-world assets doesn't just invent new value out of thin air. Instead, it upgrades the efficiency and the reach of our existing economy. By placing traditional assets on-chain, we unlock more accessible markets, greater liquidity, nearly instantaneous settlement, and truly global participation with vastly reduced friction. It's essentially a massive technological upgrade for trillions of dollars in existing capital. Take protocols like Ondo, for instance. They position themselves directly at the intersection of traditional capital markets and blockchain infrastructure. They serve as a bridge, highlighting a much larger narrative, which is the seamless connection between legacy institutions and a borderless digital economy. This brings us to part four, next-generation market architecture, focusing on-chain finance. The contrast between the old world and the new is really quite stark. Traditional markets rely on dense layers of intermediaries, think exchanges, brokers, clearinghouses, and they operate on very strict regional schedules. Conversely, on-chain finance envisions a unified ecosystem operating globally, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, completely bypassing those traditional middlemen. Imagine a world where trading, liquidity, settlement, and even complex derivatives all occur natively on a single, continuous layer of truth. The migration of financial activity from legacy databases to open blockchains fundamentally redefines what a market can be. It strips away inefficiencies that have existed for over a century. When we look at platforms like Hyperliquid, which is a decentralized exchange built for high-performance trading, we're seeing an early prototype of this future. And again, the specific platform is simply a data point here. The overarching narrative is that entirely new forms of market architecture are emerging, and the organizations building this framework are going to play a critical role in the future of global finance. Let's explore Part 5. Decentralized Physical Infrastructure, commonly known as DePIN. This is perhaps one of the most fascinating structural developments in the space today. Instead of relying exclusively on centralized corporations to build and maintain massive physical infrastructure, DePIN coordinates networks of independent participants. These individuals contribute real-world resources in exchange for digital rewards. The demands of our increasingly digital economy are growing exponentially. By using blockchain incentives, DePIN can essentially crowdsource the physical resources required to meet this demand. We're talking about coordinating global computing power, massive storage capacity, seamless network connectivity, and even energy distribution. It's an entirely new model for building real-world utility. Render provides a really clear illustration of this concept in action. It leverages decentralized networks to source idle GPU rendering power from all around the world. As artificial intelligence and digital content creation demand ever-increasing computational resources, this decentralized approach to physical infrastructure may prove to be a vital, highly scalable solution for the global economy. Finally, we arrive at Part 6, investing in civilization's future and looking past the noise. The sources we analyzed from the Liberatum AI Vault make one thing abundantly clear. Our focus has to shift. We need to look away from the speculative volatility and the headline chasing of yesterday's economy. Instead, we must focus entirely on the architectural foundations of tomorrow's civilization: decentralized intelligence, global tokenization, on-chain markets, and decentralized physical networks. These are the blueprints of the future. Now, will every project we discussed today succeed? Certainly not. Will today's market leaders remain at the top tomorrow? No one can know for sure. But history proves that while individual entities rise and fall, the underlying infrastructure outlasts them all. The technology is going to evolve and the names will change, but the trajectory toward a decentralized, highly efficient digital economy remains remarkably consistent. As we conclude this explainer, I'd like to invite you to step back and really look past the daily noise. The foundations of the next technological era are being laid down right now, block by block. The only question remaining is this: how will you position yourself to understand and navigate the architecture of tomorrow's civilization? Welcome.